Okay, so happy days, happy days. From now on, we don't know what will happen, but from now on, it's only you and I. Um, so our modus operandi from now on is our assumption is that our TAs will not come back. Well, they are worried about you guys and everything, but I told them not to worry because I'm here, and and I'll do everything. I'll do the grading, and I will be at your disposal full time from now on. Let's see what happens, and we'll decide which changes we'll take. One thing that I promise you, obviously, is that your grades will not be impacted. And you obviously ask me, how come? And I'll answer, I don't know. But I obviously will not expect that you will be able to accomplish what you could accomplish if you had your TAs helping you in the next 2 weeks. And as much as I will try to help you with the EDM in the next 2 weeks, I have more than 300 students. And so I'll do my best, which means that I'll start from the end. The good news is that I am a generous grader. Because I am with you, I want you to have the highest grades possible. So, and I have, luckily, your TAs left everything absolutely organized, perfect, and ready for me to take on. I have all the information, I have all the docs. I don't know how I will have time for the classes, for the lectures I still want to give you, and start reading all the documents and everything, but I will. The problem will be that the grades will be delayed. It will take longer for me to go through everything and to grade everything. So many of you are seniors and you need your grades as soon as possible, not delayed by weeks. And I'll give priority to the seniors. So again, let's see what happens. And in the next days, we'll know better. Today, I think there is a big meeting with the parties negotiating. And even though I intuitively am skeptic that things will change, let's see. So your TAs are off the grid. Please don't email them, not because they don't want to, because we want to support and respect them. And we don't want to put them in a position that they, oh no, I cannot not answer. So talk to me only, all right? And email, you have my cellular number. You can text me any hour about anything. I am trying, I'm really trying to put my communication with you top priority. I'm answering emails as fast as I can. And also text messages, and we can talk on the phone, and we can meet on Zoom. And don't worry, we'll solve it. We'll do it. It will be fun. Now, I have as I sent you yesterday, I have 4 office hours per week. Let's meet. We can meet also outside the office hours. And we'll play by the music in these coming days. Things will be clearer. One thing that I already did is that all the deadlines for the Gaddafis I postponed to the last day of the semester. And I think that I will remove another Gaddafi from the requirements. So at this moment, your Gaddafi grade is the best 5 grades. I haven't decided yet, but probably I will take out the last Gaddafi and your grade will be the best 4 grades. That facilitates things. Also because I doubt if I will have, if we'll manage to cover perception and action, which the last Gaddafi refers to. Maybe next week, maybe my last 2 lectures or last lecture we'll use for the EDM. As you already understood, you all have the option of recording your EDM presentations. And that's it for the moment. So I suggest we start to talk about our auditory system. And then after the lecture, we can talk about all your questions, all right? So let me share the screen again. Can you see it? Yes. Anyone?
Yes.
Yes, great. Participants, we are here. Okay, now, by the end of this class, I am going to show you something really cool, which is literally a cell inside our head that dances according to the music, but literally dances and literally according to the music. And I think it's really cool. Now I have a question. Yeah, I have a question for you that usually I ask in the beginning of the semester. And it's a little bit morbid, but it's an interesting question. Let me put the poll. All right, can you see it? Okay, so God forbid, what do you think would be worse? To lose your sight or to lose your hearing? Okay. Almost everybody, yes, continue, 50-50. Almost everybody voted. All right, so most people, usually the difference is larger. Maybe because now you are already in the end of the semester and you have considerable knowledge about our perceptual system. But 58% answered vision and 42% hearing. Usually, most people feel that intuitively to lose your sight is worse than losing your hearing. So let's put it this way. Tell me if you agree with me. For survival, imagine an animal, or imagine yourself lost in a forest. I'm laughing from the so for survival, I suppose that yes, vision is more important. But I think that for our lives, in the context that we live in, hearing is worse. Because most of our lives revolve around communication with other people. And for communication, for us that were born with all our senses, hearing is much more important. A person that can only see and not hear other people seems to be much more disconnected than a blind person that can hear. Try to watch a movie. I'm not talking about auteur, talking about regular, I don't know, a sitcom or a normal Woody Allen or Seinfeld. If you watch it without sound, you cannot understand anything, what's going on. But if you only hear it, you can understand. Imagine a dinner with your friends and family. If you cannot hear anything, you are completely, you are cruelly disconnected. But if you can hear and you can talk, so yes, and music, yes, and yes, reading lips. Well, there is. On the other hand, there is an interesting thing. Deaf people, the society considers it a handicap, but they don't, and which is only for hearing, like we blind people or people with motoric or movement disabilities, they don't consider it as they do consider it as a problem, let's put it this way. Deaf people see it differently. And there is, and it has been a long, open discussion among the deaf community about hearing aids for children, especially. They perceive themselves as fully communicating. And I'm not saying they perceive as if I don't perceive, I don't know. But they don't perceive it as a limiting problem. And many parents, deaf parents, that both parents are deaf, they choose to not, and when the children are born deaf, they choose not to do any cochlear implant or using any hearing device, because they feel that they lose communication with their children. Their identity is strongly associated, and this is only for hearing. And I find it very, very interesting. And there are people that hear well and are born with deaf parents, and they speak sign language fluently. and they have very interesting insights on the matter. Whether it makes a difference if the choice is from birth, meaning, what do you mean choice? If the Charles, what do you mean?
No, I just meant that you asked which would we give up if we had to choose one, and that whoops, sorry, and that it would make a difference whether that choice was
Yes,
from
that
birth or from, in
I,
other words, if we were saying,
yes, yes,
okay,
yes.
we're going to live our lives from birth without sight or without hearing versus as an adult giving up one for some reason that they had to.
I agree. I agree with you. Yes, this question is mostly relevant for us that were born with both senses, and our without thinking intuitive feeling about what it means to lose one or the other. I would prefer to lose my sight. And again, as I just said, the children, people that are born deaf, they don't perceive it as a handicap. All right, let's begin. Where are we? So last time, let me just review it shortly. We talked about sound. So air pressure waves, they have amplitude, which is this height, and frequency measured in hertz, which is the number of hertz is number of events per second, in our case number of cycles per second. We perceive amplitude as loudness and frequency as pitch. Like our system translates these two physical properties into loudness and pitch, but they are only related. They are not directly translated. When air pressure waves propagate, the frequency is conserved across time and space. By the way, can you see my mouse when I hover it over the... Can you see now my mouse on the...
Yeah.
Okay. So when sound waves propagate, frequency is conserved, but the energy, which is also conserved as a whole, it disperses across space as a function of the area, which means that the longer it propagates, the lower the amplitude. And we also saw that if we want to depict perception by sound pressure, a linear scale is very not comfortable. So because everything, most of our sounds would be squeezed here in a very small range. So we prefer to translate it into a logarithm scale, which is decibels, which is log to the base of 10. So 20 decibels change is equivalent to a 10 times change in sound pressure. So at 20, from 20 decibels to 40 decibels, the sound, the physical energy is 10 times higher. From 20 to 60 is 100 times larger, all right? And above for 85 decibels of continuous, we'll talk more about hearing loss today and next lecture also. We start to accumulate damage. Hearing loss is gradual. It accumulates over time. Although one event of an extremely loud sound can make at once an irreversible damage. we'll see different kinds of hearing loss. We also saw that our threshold for sounds is different across frequencies. So we are more sensitive to sounds between 1,000 and 5,000 hertz, which more or less is commensurate to our speech, which is this area, which is between 500 and 5,000, and between 40 and 60 decibels. Below this green line, we cannot hear. This is the minimum threshold. And above this blue, right? Blue line, we feel pain, literally pain. And damage begins already above this area. And we saw that humans, people lose with age, they lose gradually, they lose hearing, mostly for higher frequencies, but also for low frequencies. The Fourier spectrum is a representation that is very comfortable, especially for complex sounds. So here on the bottom is the Fourier. So here we have frequency. This is 1,000 hertz, but larger amplitude. And here we have 10,000 hertz. This is large amplitude. It's a linear addition of the height of the amplitude. And what I just said sounds just like light waves. What we see in our natural environment are a bunch of different waves of different frequencies that reach our senses together, the same for sounds. We hardly have pure tones in life. So here we have white noise, which is all the tones together with the same amplitude. And most of the sounds are a mix of different harmonics, which gives the identity, which is timbre. So pitch would be how high and how low is a sound, and timbre is the identities, the difference. So a violin and a piano may emit the same note, the same pitch, but they sound completely different. The difference is the timbre. All right, so let's start with the ear. So we have the ear, the auditory system is divided in three: the outer ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear. So in the outer ear, we have the pinna, what we call the ear, which is this flap of cartilage, and the auditory canal that ends in our eardrum here. To the back of our eardrum, we have three small bones, the ossicles, and in the end of the stapes, it touches the cochlea, which is a very funny, we'll see it later, thing that it filled with liquid. And the middle ear transforms the vibrations that come, the air vibrations that come from outside, it amplifies it, And then these vibrations are transmitted to the liquid inside the cochlea, and inside the inner ear, the system separates and analyzes the different frequencies and transforms vibration into electric signal that is sent through the auditory nerve to the brain. So the outer ear serves mainly as a directional microphone. So these funny folds that we have on in our pinna, they somehow they filter the sound that comes from the direction our head moves to, and it a little bit modulates I'm doing like this, it a little bit modulates some sounds and filter out other sounds, but mainly it's a directional filter. Our middle ear, through impedance matching that we will learn later, modulates the vibrations into the inner ear that separates and analyzes the frequencies. So these folds that we have, this is very personal, and this is very important for our localization of sounds. If we change the shape of a person's ear, it can be, there were experiments that to check that in lab the shape was changed, or sometimes by accidents. The person has to relearn to localize the sound, because it's really sensitive the way the sound is funneled into the auditory canal. Each ear does a little bit different, and since we start to hear, we learn to interpret it. So it's very personal. The human auditory canal, and by that the human I mean this length and its diameter, it emphasizes some ranges of frequencies and less others. Mostly the ranges that we mostly depend on in our daily life. An elephant, for instance, has a much larger ear and a much wider channel, and it emphasizes much lower frequencies. And small animals like mice, the opposite, from much higher frequencies. Okay, so in the end of the auditory canal, we have our eardrum, well protected. And then our inner ear is the eardrum, and these three bones, they are very small, and they are hinged one to the other. The malleus, which means hammer, incus means anvil, and stapes means I don't know. So the malleus is attached to the eardrum, and it hinges on the incus with hinges on the stapes. And it's later we'll see it's a very ingenious mechanical device. It amplifies some ranges and filters others. So this is the ossicular bridge is another name for these three bones. And in the end here, we can see very well in the end of these tapes, we have this foot plate, and this foot plate touches the oval window in the cochlea. So what it does, the middle ear, these three bones, because the vibrations, the energy moves from air to fluid inside the cochlea inside our inner ear, we have fluid, which is much more dense than air. So these vibrations must be amplified. So if any vibration from something less dense to more dense, obviously it must be stronger. Like if you, I don't know, anything solid, the same energy vibrates much less than something less solid. So how does it do? So impedance matching is achieved through different mechanisms. One is by funneling this energy from a larger area to a smaller area. So imagine when you have a hose, a water hose, and you squeeze the hose, the same amount of water concentrates through a narrower diameter. So this concentration is the same energy in a small, it gets stronger, but it's the same energy. It's because it was concentrated from a larger area to a smaller area. When you take a hammer and you struck a nail, so all the energy from the large area and its weight from the hammer everything is transmitted to the very pointed small area of the nail, and that's why the nail is able to penetrate something very dense like wood or whatever. So this is one way. Let's go back. Let me show you again. So all this area of the eardrum is transmitted to this smaller area. So this is the funneling. The other way that it does is through leveraging. So imagine, here in the picture, it's a, how do we call it? Seesaw crosser, like the children's. Any fulcrum, the idea of a fulcrum is that you transform a large movement into a small a large distance movement to a smaller one, but you conserve energy, so you have more power. For instance, pliers, that's how or a cutter. So can you see it? So this is a big cutter that we use. I don't know who are we bicycle thieves. We use it to cut, yeah. So how does it work? Because all this movement, this large movement, is translated into this very small distance, and it's the same power. So this concentration of power is the same idea, the same leverage that these ossicles perform. Where was I here? Okay, so they are hinged. It's exactly the same like the cutter I just showed you. They translate a large movement into small movement with larger power, that are able to vibrate the liquid, which is denser than air. Right? Makes sense? Okay. So this is a picture of the of this tape. All right. So this is, so here you have the foot plate and here you have the foot plate. So this is a normal one. So we are going to zoom in into this area. This is a healthy state. What happens sometimes is that you have calcification in this area, which hampers the movement of it gets stuck. And this can lead to from partial to even total hearing loss. This kind of hearing loss is called conduction loss because is a result of the conduction from the outer ear into the inner ear. There are different kinds of hearing loss that we'll see later. This specific kind of hearing loss can be actually, it's not too complicated, can be repaired by surgery. This over-bonification, calcification can be removed. Sorry. Conduction hearing loss can also occur by different reasons. These bones can break or they can dislocate. The eardrum can be punctured. Any damage to the inner ear, to any part of it, because it's a transduction of these movements from the air into these movements for all the range of frequencies. So any hearing loss from any damage to the inner ear affects all frequencies across all range of hearing. So here on the side, here this is a normal, a healthy eardrum. And these are perforated. It actually is the same one. Usually ruptures, most 90-95% of ruptures to the eardrum, they recover, they heal by themselves within 2 to 4 weeks. So this is, I don't know, between 2 to 4 weeks it heals itself. And it can happen for many different reasons, sometimes even when in a plane, when you cannot decompress the inner pressure inside. We have a small canal, we'll see later in the picture, we have a small canal from the middle ear to our vocal space. If you are, how do you say, congested, and this passage is closed, then the pressure inside the inner ear can be too strong, and it can pop the eardrum. In swimming, it can happen. Diving, accidents, a blow, if you get a blow in your ear. It's not nice. It can lead to bleeding, tinnitus, which is like when you hear bells inside your ear. Temporary hearing loss. Sometimes when it's very strong, it can reach your labyrinthus, and you can feel vertigo when you lose balance. So this is conduction hearing loss. These are all mechanical problems in the middle ear, all right? Another way that sound, that vibrations reach our inner ear, our cochlea, which transducts kinetic energy movement into electric signals. So vibration reaches our cochlea mostly through the middle ear, but also through vibrations of our skull. When we talk or when sound waves reach our head, our skull also vibrates. And when it vibrates, it this vibration reaches the cochlea. So that's why we hear ourselves talking even when we close our ears. We can hear ourselves, even if we are using very effective earplugs. That's also why when we hear a recording of ourselves speaking, it sounds so different, because we are used to hear our voice at the same time through the vibration of our skull and through the vibrations of the air that enter our ear. When we hear a recording, we are hearing our voice only through the ear, without bone conduction. I hope that none of you have ever been inside a magnet, an MRI, but inside the MRI, when it starts to move the magnet, it's very, very noisy and it's damaging. It's too loud. So when a patient inside or a participant in an experiment is inside the magnet, they have to use very, very effective earplugs. And for the experimenter or the technician to communicate with the person inside the magnet, they attach a small device into the head, into the skull, with a small microphone, which vibrates the skull. So so the person hears only through bone conduction. All right. And then the third kind of hearing loss is sensory or neural, and is a result of damage either in our inner ear, that we'll learn soon, or to the nerves, to the auditory nerves that bring the information to the brain. And these are hard to solve, if at all possible. Neurological hearing loss is a big problem. Okay, so this is our cochlea inside. So now we are inside our inner ear. And our cochlea is a frequency separator, as I said before. What time is it? Now we still have half an hour, all right. So inside the inner ear, we also have the labyrinth, which is a small device, also with liquid inside and small hair cells, also cilia, also called cilia. We'll see other cilia here. And they are inside a small vestibulum and with liquid, and that's how we perceive how the relation of our head to the surface of the earth, because when we do like this, the liquid stays parallel to the earth and the cilia can perceive this movement in relation to the earth. So when we have inflammation inside the labyrinth or any other problem, we lose balance. And it has nothing to do with hearing, the labyrinth, but it's inside the inner ear. We'll not talk more about it. So here we have the foot plate of the stape. It presses on the oval window, this part of the cochlea. And the cochlea is here, it's a schematic representation, but the cochlea, it's rolled up in itself many, many times. It's like a snail, but with many. So if we unroll the cochlea, we'll have this. And it can be done by dissecting a dead animal. The cochlea is filled with liquid, and it's separated in the middle by a membrane here. And the two and it has two channels inside, the vestibuli and the tympani, and they are connected only in the apex. They're separated throughout the cochlea by a membrane that we'll see it soon. So what we'll see next slide is a cross section, is this cross section of the cochlea, right? So it's this cross section. So liquid, although it can be compressed, it cannot be compressed too much. So every time the foot plate presses on the oval window, there is a pneumatic pressure inside. It has to go somewhere. So it's relieved in the round window. The round window, every time it presses here, this depresses. Okay. So the tissue that separates the upper canal, the vestibuli canal and the tympani canal, on this membrane we have the organ of Corti, and the organ of Corti houses the basilar membrane, which is different. We'll talk more about the basilar membrane next class when we talk about pitch perception. So the basilar membrane is different from the base to the apex of the cochlea. Here it's narrow and thick, and here is wider and thinner. And this difference is very important because it allows this the basilar membrane to oscillate differently according to the frequency of the movement, of the vibrations of the liquid. Okay, so the base, the thicker and narrower part, the base of the basilar membrane, vibrates mainly for high frequencies. And the thinner and wider part of the basilar membrane in the apex of the cochlea, it vibrates much more for lower frequencies. Okay, so this again is the cross section. So we can see here, this is the upper channel, the vestibuli scala, and this is the tympani. And here we have the basilar membrane, and this is the organ of Corti. And here inside, so here this rectangle, we go outside, here we have our receptors, our sound receptors. And they, when they fire, they transmit to the electrical signals to the auditory nerve fibers that go out from here and to the brain. So this is This is very interesting. If you see here, let me see. We are here, right? Okay. So the basilar membrane is this part here, and when the liquid inside the cochlea vibrates, this membrane, which is hinged, imagine it's hinged here on the right side, and this detectorial membrane is hinged here on the left side. So look at me here. It goes like this. Imagine this is the basilar membrane, and this is the tectorial membrane. It's like this. So when it vibrates, it does something like this. So the basilar membrane goes up and down, okay? But because of the hinge here and here, the tectorial membrane moves in relation to the organ of Corti, where our hair cells, our receptors are. It moves left to right. It does like this, okay? You can see it, right? So here we have, on the organ of Corti, we have our hair cells. They're called hair cells. These are the same as our photoreceptors, our cones and rods for vision. So here we have the inner hair cells and the outer hair cells. So the inner hair cells, they are arranged in one row across this is a cross section. So what we see here is a cross section, right? So they are one row along the cochlea. And the outer hair cells, they are three rows along the cochlea. On the top of all hair cells, we have cilia, which are these little hairs sticking from each hair cell. And they are the main mechanism responsible for transduction, for transforming movement into chemical reactions that result in electrical reactions. So this is exactly where, literally, and in any other sense, it's not clear as here. Here is exactly the point where the outer physical world is translated to our inner world, to perception. Here is exactly where perception occurs. Here, if we one day thought that we could answer the psychophysical question, this would be a good, well, it's not, but here is the first connection or disconnection between our sensations, experience, perception to the physical world outside. I don't know. Sorry, I get excited by that. So what happens is that when the tectorial membrane moves from left to right, when it rubs the top of the hair cells, it also moves these cilia. These cilia, they tilt. And when they tilt, they open little channels, ion channels on the top of those hair cells, which allow for ions to enter the cell, and tuck, it fires. That's how it works. All right. What time is it? We have 20 minutes. Okay, I'll give you a minute to answer this. No, and Poe. Let me, I want the first Poe. Launch. Okay. Almost everybody answered. I see. Well, a patient can you hear me? Yeah. A patient complains of difficulty hearing. Her auditory thresholds are unusually high when sounds are played through a speaker. Her thresholds are unusually high, meaning that she cannot hear well, right? But her thresholds are normal when sound pressure waves are transmitted through her skull. She probably has damage to her pinna, ossicular bridge, which is the middle ear, cochlea. Okay, let's begin from the end. If it was damage in her auditory nerve or cochlea, she would not be able to hear through bone conduction or anything. Now the pinna is more about direction. There wouldn't be much difference. She maybe could not localize the sound, but she wouldn't have a unusually high thresholds for most the frequencies. And this is exactly what would be the middle ear problem. Anything between the eardrum or any one of the three bones. So the answer is B. Anyone has a question about this answer? Why is B? Yes, no? Can I continue then? All right. Let me close this. How much time? All right. Okay. The hair cells. So these are our hair cells, the inner hair cells in one row, and 3 rows of outer hair cells. So what we see here is here. Yes, you can see. So afferent nerves are to the brain. Every afferent neuron is something that goes from the tissue to the brain. And efferent is from the brain away from the brain. What the efferent is what the brain sends. So as we can see here, most of the axons, they are from the receptors, from the hair cells to the brain. It makes sense. But for both of them, there is also one axon that communicates directly from the brain to the receptor. And we don't have it anywhere else. Actually, I'm not sure if anywhere else. Well, not in taste, not in smell. I don't know about touch, but we don't have it in vision. In vision, the first stage that the brain starts to modulate information that comes from the retina is later, is maybe, I don't know if bipolar cells or amacrine, but maybe even after the ganglion cells. Here we have direct modulation by the brain to the inner hair cells, and it serves for a very fast and efficient way for top-down modulation of the input when we want to pay attention to something, to part of the sounds we are hearing, and not to others. These efferent fibers, they do it. And they do it directly on the receptors. Okay, so here we have the cilia. Let's see how it works, the transduction. So on top of each hair cell, we have this little cilia. So here we have the 3 rows of the inner hair cells and the outer hair cells. This is a electron picture, yes, microscope. This is the real thing. So transduction for all our senses, transduction is the transformation of any energy, any physical energy into electrical energy, electrical signals. So on the top, so the top of each cilia, so each hair cell has its own cilia, and on the top of each cilia, there are these little connections called tip links, and they all so these connections cause the movement of all the cilia of each hair cell. It causes them to move together. All right. And what happens? So here again we have it on the top of each one. Whenever it tilts to the side, whenever it tilts to the side, it stretches these fibers, these tip links, and then it opens. Can you see how it works? It opens this channel mechanically. It's really simple. Mechanically, it opens the channel, and then potassium molecules enter, and then we have an actual potential inside. And when it's standing straight, these channels are closed. This is a very simplistic mechanical device. And actually, this is literally an electric switch. When you move, tick, tick, on, off, on, off, on, off, it moves, it fires, it stands, it closes, not fires. So it's fire, 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 fire. And it goes, and if we assess the activity of an auditory nerve fiber with a single cell recording, and during the stimulation by a given sound with a given frequency, we can really see the same frequency in the firing of that auditory nerve site, which is exactly the same frequency of movement. The tectorial membrane is rubbing left, right, it open, closes, and it fires with the frequency of the sound. And so this is mainly for low and medium frequencies. When sound frequencies are too high, our neurons, they cannot fire that fast, but we will see later other ways that the frequency of the sound is translated, is sent. And And now there is one more mechanism that amplifies this entire this transduction of kinetic energy, the movement, vibration to electrical energy. Now, first of all, what we have, which kind of hair cells, anyone? These are outer or inner? These are inner, right? We have 3 rows. So the outer cell, the inner cells, they don't have this property, but the inner cells do. What happens is that whenever they fire, they also change their shape for every time. So every time they fire, they stretch and then contract in the same rate as they fire. They get longer and thinner every time they fire, and then they come back. So what it does, so look at my hands, if you can you see it from the small window? So what it does, yes, okay. So imagine that this is the tectorial membrane, and these are the hair cells. So it's doing like this to the cilia, right? So when it elongates, it also presses up. So it's not only this movement, but this is also doing. So it amplifies the tilting of the cilia. Back, up, okay? And this further amplifies the specific frequency that that the cilia are tilting. And now I'm going to show you something unbelievable. So this was recorded in this is from the City University of Hong Kong, Jonathan Ashmore, and it's what you'll see. It's a guinea pig outer hair cell, which was just taken off of a dissection. This cell can live. It remains active. It's not, I don't know what to, alive. It's alive because it moves, but it's, I don't know, it's not alive because it's not, it's not an organism by itself. But it remains active for, I don't know, minutes or maybe hours, I don't know, after it was removed, when it's fresh. So what they did, they took, like any sound device that you have at home, so it's electricity, an amplifier takes the whatever information, transforms electricity with the frequency, sends to the loudspeaker, and the rate of the electricity, the frequency, makes the membrane of the speaker to move the air, okay? So what they did, actually they did it from a Walkman. So they connected the Walkman, they played music on the Walkman, and they took the cable, the electric cable, one to a speaker and the other one to a small electrode that they connected to this hair cell. It's an outer hair cell, freshly removed from a guinea pig. This is the electrode, okay? So here, exactly the same electricity that goes to the loudspeaker, this electricity was probably reduced, but it's the same frequency touching the cell. And look what happens. So because of restrictions to copyrights to the song of the original video, I had to sing it myself, so I apologize. But you can go directly to the original video through the link that appears here. One, two, three o'clock. Clock. Say clock. I says 11, says clock, hurrah, rock tonight, zom bum bum, zom bum bum, zing, zom visors in grounds in bros, zing bros, hurry, hurry, she rides, she rides, on the rise, rounds and grounds is on the right. Isn't it crazy? It's crazy. It's like we have inside our ears all our receptors are little bloody things that literally dance. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. They dance better than many people I know. And this is the original music. This is a recording. You can find it in the slides. You have there the. Now, have you realized to which part of the music it was reacting? To the beat, to the lower beats, right? Mainly to the bass, which means that it was probably removed from the apex of the cochlea. Next class we'll see that the different areas of the cochlea, they react to very specific different frequencies. So in your slides, you have all the website. So this is, read it later. This is from there also. Let me just show you how much. So we have 3 minutes. Perfect. Let me just show you what happens when we have damage to our hair cells. So this is our hair cells. We are going to zoom in. Okay, we are going to see this as a picture. Okay. So the tunnel of Corti is the same as the arches of Corti. So here, outside the picture, is the inner hair cell. And these are the 3 rows of the outer hair cells, right? These are the cilia and the basilar membrane going down here, and the ectorial membrane up here somewhere. No, this is from this side. Okay. So these are healthy ones. They look healthy, right? Now look what happens to an animal that was exposed to very loud sounds. Look what happened to the hair cells. Look the difference. They are literally destroyed. And this is sensory hearing loss. And this cannot be resolved. Maybe with the cochlear transplant, but it's a mess. There are some animals that their hair cells regenerate. Ours don't. They do not. So take care of your ears. New York, in the subway, I told you, when those trains break, they reach, I don't remember, it was 120 decibels. This is crazy. This is very noisy. Use earplugs when you spend a lot of time in the subway. And other noisy, and your EDM is about hearing loss. They don't say where they assume, but I assume that the hearing loss is in the EDM. In that paper is damage to these fellows, to the outer hair cells. All right, we are done. This we'll talk about it next time. Actually, it's good because it's very related to pitch. That's it. Questions? Can these be caused by headphones even at low levels? Depends on the level. Actually, in your iPhone now, in the new system, there is let me see. It really explains it. Inside, does anyone know? Have you seen it? It's in health. Let me see. It really explains how much, and you can limit the maximum. I'll find it for next time. I'm like, this is the situation that I see that I'm old. When I like have to do like this and I do like this and I cannot find the icon. It's the icon that I use every day. Which one? I'm closer. My performance with my iPhone is closer to my grandfather than to you guys. I don't know. It's health. I'll find, and it explains how to limit and which. So yes, if you hear headphones above a certain level for prolonged period of times, it damages and it's irreversible. Headphone safety. More questions.